I spent 15 years clearing filth for strangers, while my own home was rotting from the inside. When I analyzed our trash, I realized the real garbage was my cheating wife. The smell of a transfer station never really leaves you. It's a mix of diesel fumes, wet cardboard, and, well, life decomposing. Most people hold their breath when they drive past metro waste systems. I breathe it in. That smell pays the mortgage. It pays for the granite countertops I'm afraid to scratch, and the engineered hardwood floors I'm not allowed to walk on with my boots. I stood on the loading dock, watching the fleet roll in. Tuesday afternoon, the busiest day for residential pickup. My clipboard was heavy in my hand. Old school, I know, but I like writing things down. Ink doesn't glitch. "Truck 44, you're heavy on the rear axle," I called out, tapping the side of the cab. "Check your distribution next time." The driver nodded, looking exhausted. I knew the feeling. I pulled a double shift to cover the cost of the master bath renovation Jessica wanted. Spa-inspired, she called it. $5,000 for a bathtub we've used twice. But hey, that's the job. I'm the supervisor. I manage the mess so everyone else can pretend it doesn't exist. I clocked out at 5:30 p.m. My hands were raw from the industrial citrus soap we use in the locker room, but I could still smell the landfill on me. It gets into your pores. I climbed into my Ford F-150. It's a 2018, reliable, paid off. I kept it parked around the back of the facility so it wouldn't get dinged by the haulers. The drive home to Oak Creek takes 40 minutes, 20 minutes of highway, and 20 minutes of winding through manicured subdivisions where the grass is so green it looks fake. Pulling into my driveway always feels weird. My truck looks like a bruised thumb against the pristine white siding of our house. The house is worth $850,000. I know exactly what it's worth because Jessica reminds me every time the market fluctuates. I sat in the cab for a minute, engine idling. This is my ritual. I have a bottle of heavy-duty sanitizer in the center console. I scrubbed my hands. Once. Twice. I checked my fingernails. Clean. I can't bring the job inside. Jessica hates the smell. She says it lingers on the upholstery. I killed the engine. The house was dark, except for the blue flicker of the TV in the living room. I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, the guilt of being late, the pressure to be cleaner, better, more present. I stepped out, my boots crunching on the gravel. "Jack, good to see you actually driving your truck." The voice cut through the evening air like a siren. I turned. Martha Higgins. She was standing by her mailbox across the street, clutching that nervous little poodle of hers. Martha is the self-appointed guardian of the neighborhood HOA. She knows everyone's business because she has none of her own. "Evening, Martha," I said, trying to keep walking. "I was just telling Jessica this morning," she shouted, stepping off the curb and coming toward me. She lowered her voice to a stage whisper, her eyes gleaming with something that wasn't kindness. "I asked her if you'd finally traded up. That black Lincoln Navigator looks sharp in your driveway, Jack. Really sharp." I stopped. My hand froze on the door handle. "Lincoln Navigator?" I asked. "Oh, yes, the big one, tinted windows. I've seen it parked there the last few Tuesday mornings. I assumed you got a promotion." She tilted her head, watching my face. Jessica didn't answer me when I asked, just sort of waved me off. I don't know anyone with a Lincoln Navigator. The guys at work drive Fords or Rams. My friends, the few I have left, drive sedans. "Must have been a delivery," I lied. The words came out automatic, a containment protocol. "We're getting some furniture." "A delivery," Martha repeated, her smile stretching tight. "Right. Well, they certainly stay a long time for a delivery. Anyway, tell Jessica I said hello." She turned and walked away, looking satisfied. I stood there for a second. The wind bit at my neck. A Lincoln Navigator. Tuesday mornings. Tuesday is my long haul day. I'm gone from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. I opened the front door. The air inside hit me, lavender and vanilla. It was aggressive, like someone had sprayed an entire bottle of air freshener to kill a bad smell. "Jess?" I called out. She was on the beige sectional, legs tucked under her, scrolling on her phone. She didn't look up immediately. She was wearing that gray athleisure set, the one that costs more than my work boots. Her hair was done, blonde highlights catching the TV light. "You're late," she said. Not angry, just detached. "And you smell like garbage, Jack." "Sorry," I said, closing the door. I stayed on the entryway rug. "Double shift. We had a hydraulic failure on line 3. She finally looked up. Her eyes swept over me, landing on my boots. "Take those off, please. I just had the carpet steamed." I unlaced my boots, placing them on the rubber tray. "Martha Higgins caught me outside," I said, watching her reflection in the hall mirror. Jessica stiffened. It was small, just a tensing of her shoulders, but I saw it. "Oh? What did that witch want?" "She asked about the new car," I said. "Said she saw a black Lincoln Navigator in the driveway this morning. Asked if I traded up." Jessica swiped on her phone screen, a little too hard. "She's going senile. It was a solicitor, Jack. Some pushy guy selling solar panels or something. I didn't even open the door. Martha said the car was parked here. For a while." "Jack, honestly," she sighed, putting the phone down face down on the cushion. "Are you really going to interrogate me because Martha needs glasses? It was a solicitor. He parked, he knocked, I ignored him, he left. Can you go shower? The smell is giving me a headache." I looked at her. She looked tired, annoyed, and completely beautiful. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. It's easier to believe the lie. It's efficient. "Yeah," I said. "I'll go shower." Dinner was quiet. I ate standing over the kitchen sink, a habit she hates, but I didn't want to set the table just to dirty it again. Jessica poured herself a glass of wine, Pinot Grigio. She was humming something, a tune I didn't know. I watched her. She seemed lighter, excited almost, but trying to hide it. My mind started running the route. Lincoln Navigator. Who drives a Navigator? It's a politician's car, or a real estate broker. Then it clicked. Gavin Thorne, the city councilman for District 4. I see his billboards all over my route. Cleaning up our city. He drives a black Navigator. I've seen it at the city hall lot when I drop off the municipal contracts. I shook my head. That's crazy. Jessica doesn't know Gavin Thorne. She's a housewife in Oak Creek. He's a guy who cuts ribbons at park openings. But the seed was planted, and in my line of work, you know that once rot starts, it spreads. At 10 p.m., Jessica went up to bed. "Migraine," she said, kissing me on the cheek. Her lips felt cold. I stayed downstairs. The house was silent. Too silent. I could hear the refrigerator humming. I walked over to the stainless steel trash compactor. The red light was on, full. Most people look at trash and see, well, trash. I see data. I see habits. I see secrets. People think that once they put something in a black plastic bag, it vanishes from the universe. It doesn't. It just changes custody. I pressed the button to open the drawer. The bag was compressed, tight and heavy. I shouldn't do this. I'm a paranoid idiot. Martha is a gossip. Jessica loves me. We've been married 12 years. I pulled the bag out. It was heavy. Heavier than usual for a Tuesday. I didn't take it to the curb. I carried it out to the garage. The garage is my space. It smells like oil and cold concrete. I flipped on the workbench light, a single buzzing fluorescent strip. I put the bag on a blue tarp I use for painting. I felt ridiculous. My hands were shaking a little. I grabbed a pair of latex gloves from my toolbox. Snap! The sound echoed in the empty garage. I cut the knot. The smell hit me first. Coffee grounds, eggshells, the sweet, sickly smell of spoilage. I started the sort. It's muscle memory. Recyclables to the left, wet waste to the right. I moved a pile of soggy paper towels and saw it. A glass bottle, dark green. I picked it up. It was heavy, high quality. I wiped the coffee grounds off the label. Veuve Clicquot. I stared at the orange label. I drink Miller High Life. On a special occasion, maybe a craft IPA if Peter brings some over.
Jessica drinks boxed wine during the week because she says she's watching the budget.
This was a $70 bottle of champagne. I dug deeper. At the bottom of the bag, wrapped in layers of newspaper, I felt jagged edges. I unfolded the paper carefully. 2 crystal flutes. Smashed. Not just broken. Smashed. Like someone had thrown them away to hide them, not because they were an accident. You don't wrap accidental glass this carefully unless you're trying to keep it from clinking when the bag moves. My stomach dropped. It felt like I was in the elevator of a high-rise and the cable just snapped. You don't pop Veuve for a solicitor. You don't drink champagne on a Tuesday morning by yourself. I stepped back, leaning against the workbench. I felt like I couldn't get enough air. Don't do this, Jess, please. Maybe she bought it for us. For our anniversary? And she dropped the glasses and got mad and threw it all out? Jessica has a temper. It's possible. I looked at the photo pinned to the pegboard above my tools. Me and her 5 years ago at a barbecue. She looked happy then. I looked younger. I almost packed it up. I almost grabbed a fresh bag, shoved it all back in, and went to bed. I could just pretend I never saw it. Ignorance is bliss, right? But I'm a supervisor. I don't ignore irregularities. I investigate them. I went back to the pile. If there was a celebration, there was a meal. I sifted through the junk mail, an electric bill, a flyer for lawn care, and then a small ball of white paper. I smoothed it out on the workbench. It was stained with grease, but the thermal ink was still legible. Le Chateau Hotel, downtown. Date, yesterday. Time, 12:30 p.m. Table for 2. Items, 2 times oysters Rockefeller, 1 times steak tartare, 1 times Pinot Noir, 1 times martini, gin. Total, $142.50. Yesterday. I was at the landfill. I checked my phone history. At 12:30 p.m. yesterday, Jessica had texted me. Cleaning the attic all day. So dusty. Love you. She wasn't in the attic. She was downtown. Eating oysters. Jessica hates oysters. She says the texture makes her gag. She didn't order them. I felt the blood rushing in my ears, a whoosh whoosh sound that drowned out the hum of the refrigerator. The Lincoln Navigator, the champagne, the hotel lunch. It wasn't paranoia. It was a forensic fact. I looked at the pile of trash, my marriage, laid out on a blue tarp. It looked different now. It looked like evidence. I started to gather it up, my movements jerky, angry. I grabbed a milk carton, half-gallon, cardboard. It felt light, empty. I went to crush it for the recycling bin. Rattle. Something rattled inside. A dull, heavy thud. I stopped. Jessica complained the milk went bad yesterday. She threw it out. I shook it again. Thud, clack. I tore the top of the carton open. I reached inside. My gloved fingers brushed against something wrapped in a paper napkin. I pulled it out. It was a cigar wrapper, black and gold, Cohiba Behike, and inside the same napkin, a heavy gold lighter. I flicked it. A strong blue flame shot up. I stared at it. She didn't just throw this away. She hid it. She put it inside a milk carton, stuffed it with a napkin so it wouldn't rattle, and buried it in the trash. Why? Because she knows I handle the trash. She knows I break down the boxes. She knows I separate the plastics. She knows my route. She knows my protocols. And she used them against me. I gripped the lighter until the metal dug into my palm through the glove. Gavin Thorne smoked cigars.
I saw him smoking one on the news after the budget hearing.
I looked up at the ceiling, toward the bedroom where my wife was sleeping off her migraine. She thinks I'm just the garbage man. She thinks I'm too tired, too stupid, too blue-collar to notice the numbers don't add up. She forgot one thing. I'm the guy who cleans up the mess. And I was about to clean house. The garage was freezing. It was January 16th, almost midnight, and the concrete slab radiated a cold that seeped right through the soles of my work boots. I didn't turn on the heater. I didn't want the noise. I sat at my workbench, the one place in the house that was still mine. The air smelled of motor oil and the damp, earthy rot of winter. Under the hum of the single fluorescent tube, I smoothed out the gold and black paper I'd fished out of the kitchen trash an hour ago. A cigar band. My hands were steady, but my stomach felt like I'd swallowed a handful of gravel. I pulled out my phone and typed the name printed on the label. Cohiba Behike. $60 for one stick. I looked at the Miller High Life can sitting next to my elbow. $2. I don't smoke cigars. I smoke generic lights when the stress gets too high, and I chew nicotine gum when I'm on the route. This wrapper was an alien object in my ecosystem. It didn't belong to me. It didn't belong to Jessica. It belonged to the man she was sleeping with. I opened the drawer of my toolbox, the one labeled fasteners, and pulled out a box of Ziploc bags. I dropped the cigar band inside, sealed it, and took a Sharpie. I wrote the date and the location found. Kitchen bin, beneath coffee grounds. I didn't scream. I didn't go upstairs and wake her up. In my line of work, you don't panic when you find hazardous waste. You contain it. You assess the spread. Then you dispose of it. 2 days later, January 18th. The morning air was sharp enough to cut your lungs. I was scraping ice off the windshield of my F-150 at 6 a.m. The sky was that bruised purple color you only get in the Rust Belt winter. Jack! Jack, honey! I stiffened. It was Martha Higgins from next door. She was bundled up in a coat that looked like a sleeping bag, tossing rock salt onto her driveway. Martha was 70, retired, and saw everything that happened on this street. I walked over to the property line. Morning, Martha. Watch your step, it's slick. Oh, I'm fine, she said, leaning on her shovel. She squinted at my truck, then at the empty spot in the driveway where Jessica usually parked. Say, is your friend coming back this Tuesday? The one with the big car? My blood went cold. I forced a smile. It felt tight on my face. My friend? You know, the tall fella. Drives that beautiful black Lincoln Navigator. I see it parked right there. She pointed a gloved finger at the spot near the garage door. Every Tuesday morning. I just wanted to ask him if he likes the mileage. My son is thinking of buying one. Every Tuesday. Oh, I said, my voice sounding hollow in my own ears. That's a consultant for the renovation. I'll ask him for you next time. Thanks, Jack. You're a good boy. She went back to her salting. I walked back to my driveway and looked down at the asphalt. The frost was thick, but there were patterns in it. I knelt down. My truck has standard tires. Jessica drives a Honda sedan. The tracks left in the hard-packed snow near the garage door were wide. Aggressive tread. Luxury SUV tires. I stood up and looked at the house. It looked normal, quiet. But now I knew the schedule. Saturday, January 20th, Jessica was out at yoga, or so she said. I told her I was going to fix the drain in the master bath, which gave me an excuse to be alone in the house with my tools. I didn't go to the bathroom. I went to the utility closet in the basement and plugged my laptop directly into the router. I'm not a hacker. I don't need to be. I manage logistics for a fleet of 50 garbage trucks. I know how to read a log. I pulled up the history for our home security system. It's a smart system. Cameras at the front door and the driveway, all connected to the Wi-Fi. I filtered the logs for Tuesdays. January 16th. System offline. User manual override. 9:15 a.m. January 16th. System online. 11:45 a.m. January 9th. System offline. User manual override. 9:10 a.m. January 9th. System online. 11:30 a.m. January 2nd. System offline. User manual override. 9:20 a.m. January 2. System online. 11:40 a.m. Asterisk. It went back months. Every Tuesday, like clockwork. The cameras weren't malfunctioning. They were being turned off. I checked my own work schedule. Tuesdays are my route inspection days. I'm on the other side of the county, usually knee-deep in a landfill compliance audit. It was the perfect window. I sat there in the dark basement, the blue light of the laptop reflecting in my eyes. It wasn't just the affair. It was the logistics of it, the planning. She had optimized her schedule around mine. She treated her infidelity with the same efficiency I applied to waste management. I respected the hustle. I really did. But she made one mistake. She assumed I was too stupid to check the data. January 23rd. Dinner. The kitchen smelled of roasted chicken and rosemary. It was a domestic lie, plated on the expensive ceramic dishes Jessica insisted we needed. She was pushing a piece of potato around her plate, not eating. I was hungry. I'd skipped lunch to meet with a supplier, but the food tasted like sawdust. "You smell," she said. She didn't look up. I paused, fork halfway to my mouth. "I showered, Jess. Used the heavy-duty soap." "It's not that," she snapped, finally looking at me. Her eyes were hard, resentful. It's seeped into you. The diesel, the garbage. It's like it's coming out of your pores, Jack. I can taste it in the air." She took a sip of her wine, a Chardonnay that cost more than my hourly rate. "It's embarrassing. When people come over, I feel like I have to apologize for the smell of this house." I looked at her. I saw the lines of tension around her mouth, the way her hand gripped the wine glass. She was picking a fight. She wanted me to snap. She wanted me to be the brute, the dirty garbage man who didn't understand her refined sensibilities. It would justify what she was doing. If I was a monster, she was a victim. I put my fork down slowly. "I'm sorry, Jess," I said, keeping my voice low, tired. I rubbed my temples. "We're short-staffed. I had to cover a route myself today. I know it's hard on you." She blinked. She hadn't expected an apology. The tension in her shoulders dropped an inch. "Well," she sighed, the victimhood returning to her voice. "I just wish you'd think about how it affects me. I feel like I'm living in a sanitation plant." "You're right," I mumbled. I'm exhausted. The new recycling mandates are killing me. I can barely keep my eyes open." I saw a flicker of relief in her eyes. She bought it. She thought I was just a tired, beaten-down mule. Good. Let her think that. January 25th. Lunch. The corner diner was loud. Plates clattering, waitresses shouting orders, the hiss of the grill. It was the perfect place to talk about money without being overheard. Peter Chang sat across from me in the booth. Peter and I went to high school together. He went to college for finance. I went to the trade school. Now he was a forensic accountant who charged $300 an hour, but for me, he was working for the cost of a burger and a favor down the line. He had a stack of paper bank statements I'd swiped from Jessica's desk. We couldn't do this online. She'd get the login alert. Peter wasn't eating. He was circling things with a red pen, his face grim. "You see this?" Peter asked, tapping a line item. "Grocery store. Cash back. $50. "Yeah? Inflation's a bitch, Pete." No, Jack, look at the pattern. He flipped the page. Grocery store, $80 cash back. Gas station, $40 cash back. Pharmacy, $60 cash back. He lined up 3 months of statements. It happens 3-4 times a week, always under $100 so it doesn't flag a fraud alert. But it adds up. She's siphoning about $1,200 a month in untraceable cash. Why? I asked. She has credit cards. You can't pay a divorce lawyer with a joint credit card if you don't want your husband to know, Peter said quietly. I felt the blood drain from my face. There's more, Peter said. He pointed to a large transfer. The renovation fund. You put 10 grand in there last month? Yeah, for the kitchen remodel. She said we needed new countertops. Jack, Peter said, leaning in. In a divorce, cash accounts are easy to split or freeze. But home equity? That's sticky. She's dumping all your liquid cash into the house. To increase the value, I said, the realization hitting me. To force a sale, Peter corrected. She pumps the value up with your savings, files for divorce, demands the house be sold, and walks away with half the equity. She's essentially laundering your savings account into real estate so she can cash it out later. I looked at the statements. Numbers don't lie. People lie. Numbers just tell you the story of the lie. She's been planning this for a while, Peter noted. This isn't an impulse, Jack. This is an exit strategy. January 27th. I went back to the trash. It was becoming a ritual. Every night after she went to sleep, I'd go to the garage and audit the bins. It was dirty work, sifting through coffee grounds and vegetable peels, but I found clarity in the filth. I found a crumpled paper bag from a fast food joint. Inside, tucked at the bottom, was a receipt. Not for a burger. Le Chateau Hotel, room service. Date, January 9th, Tuesday. Time, 12:30 p.m. 2 times, Oysters Rockefeller. 1 times, Bottle Veuve Clicquot. Total, $452. I stared at the receipt. Jan 9th. One of the Tuesdays the cameras were off. I hate oysters. The texture makes me gag. And Veuve Clicquot? I drink beer. Jessica drinks wine, but she usually buys the $15 bottles from the grocery store. $450 for lunch. I closed my eyes and did the math. That was my overtime pay for the last 2 weeks. I had been out in a snowstorm, freezing my hands off trying to get a hydraulic line fixed on truck 42, while she was in a hotel room eating oysters with Gavin Thorne. I looked at the receipt again. The last 4 digits of the card used weren't ours. Gavin was paying. But she was keeping the receipt. Why? Sentimental value? Or leverage? I put the receipt in a Ziploc bag. Evidence B. January 29th. I was sitting in the living room, staring at the new crown molding. It was white, pristine, and expensive. I realized now that I wasn't looking at my home. I was looking at a product. She had staged the house. Every renovation, every coat of paint. It wasn't for us. It was for the Zillow listing. The front door opened. Jessica breezed in, carrying shopping bags from the mall. She looked happy. Not the brittle, complaining woman she had been for months. She was glowing. "Hey," she chirped, dropping the bags on the sofa. "God, the traffic was awful." She walked over and kissed me on the cheek. Her lips were cold. It felt like being kissed by a statue. "How was your day?" she asked, actually sounding like she cared. "Fine," I said, not looking away from the TV. "Just work." "That's nice." She started unpacking the bags. "Oh, I ran into the girls. Gavin says hi. God, why did I say that? Brenda says hi." The air in the room stopped moving. She froze for a split second, her hand halfway into a bag. Then she laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "Brain fart. I was listening to the news on the radio. They were talking about Councilman Thorne. Must have stuck in my head. She looked at me, waiting. I didn't blink. I didn't react. I just nodded slowly. Yeah, he's on the news a lot. She relaxed. She let out a breath she'd been holding. He sure is. Anyway, I'm going to take a shower. She hurried out of the room. She thought she was safe. She thought I was too dense to catch a slip like that. But I knew. The happiness, the glow, that wasn't love. That was the adrenaline of being close to the finish line. She thought she had won. January 30th, late night. It was recycling night, my domain. I hauled the blue bin into the garage. I didn't just dump it. I sorted it. Cardboard, plastic, paper. I was near the bottom of the bin when I saw it. A thick envelope, white, ripped in half. It hadn't been shredded. She must have been in a hurry, or maybe she just didn't care anymore. Maybe she thought the garbage man wouldn't look at the garbage. I picked up the two halves and laid them on my workbench. I pushed them together like a puzzle. The letterhead was from a legal website, LegalZoom, draft document. My eyes scanned down to the title, Petition for Dissolution of Marriage. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. It wasn't shock. It was confirmation. I read the terms she had drafted. Petitioner requests exclusive use and possession of the marital residence. Petitioner requests 50% of respondents' 401k and pension. Petitioner requests spousal support in the amount of... She wanted everything. The house, the retirement, the truck. Then I saw the date at the bottom. Date prepared. February 15th, 2024. Valentine's Day. The day after Valentine's Day. She was going to wait until the renovation was finished, scheduled for completion on February 12th, and then she was going to serve me. She wanted the house value maximized before she kicked me out of it. I looked at the date on my watch. January 30th. I had 2 weeks. She had a plan. She had a lawyer. She had a boyfriend on the city council. But I had the trash. I had the logs. And most importantly, I knew the schedule. I carefully folded the torn pages and placed them in a clean Ziploc bag. I turned off the fluorescent light, plunging the garage into darkness. "Okay, Jessica," I whispered to the cold air. "Let's see who takes out the trash." February 1st. I sat in a leather chair that cost more than my first car. Saul Berkowitz's office smelled like old paper and lemon polish. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that costs $400 an hour. I placed the crumpled draft of the divorce petition on his mahogany desk. I'd smoothed it out, but the creases remained, just like the creases in my marriage. "She's thorough," Saul said. He didn't look up. He was reading the timeline I'd compiled, the security logs, the trash receipts, the bank transfers. He adjusted his glasses. "She's going for full custody of the house. Alimony based on your overtime pay, not your base salary. Smart. She thinks I'm stupid, Saul." "That," Saul said, finally looking at me, "is your biggest asset." He leaned back, tenting his fingers. "Look, in this state, infidelity is a slap on the wrist. You go to court with photos of her and Councilman Thorne. The judge yawns. You split the assets 50-50. She gets half your pension, half the house." My stomach tightened. I worked double shifts for 6 years to pay off that mortgage. "I know. That's why we're not going to court. Not yet." Saul pulled a file from his drawer. "We're going to help her." "Help her?" "We're going to help her protect herself from you." Saul slid a document across the desk. It was thick, heavy. The liability shield, a post-nuptial asset separation agreement. I picked it up. The legal jargon was dense, but the logic was simple. "If Jessica believes you are about to be financially incinerated," Saul said, his voice dropping to a low, conspiratorial rumble, "she will want to cut the cord. This document says she waives all claim to the marital assets, the house, the cars, the retirement accounts, in exchange for total immunity from your debts." But I don't have debts, I said. Saul smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Not yet. February 2nd, morning. I met Peter Chang at a diner on the edge of town. Peter is a forensic accountant I've known since high school. He's the guy you call when the numbers don't add up. The booth seat was cracked, taped over with gray duct tape. I slid into the corner. "You sure about this, Jack?" Peter asked. He looked nervous. He kept tapping his spoon against his coffee mug. Clink, clink, clink. I need it to look real, Pete. Scary real. Peter sighed and pulled a laptop out of his bag. I pulled the EPA codes for leachate contamination, Class A violation, federal RICO statutes for organized kickbacks. If this was real, man, you'd be looking at 20 years. Make it 25, I said. We spent 2 hours drafting the memo. It was a work of art. Metro Waste Systems, internal confidential. Subject, catastrophic containment failure / federal indictment pending. We cooked the numbers. A $4.5 million fine. Immediate asset seizure for restitution. Peter printed it on heavy bond paper. He even had a stamp, red ink, all caps, confidential. He pressed it down. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet diner. "You know," Peter said, sliding the papers to me, "if she actually loved you, this wouldn't work. She'd stand by you. She'd fight the fine with you." I looked at the red stamp. I know. February 2nd, 7:15 p.m. I sat in my truck in the driveway for 20 minutes. The engine ticked as it cooled. I needed to sell this. I needed to look like a man who had just watched his life go into the compactor. I unbuttoned my collar, loosened my tie until it hung sideways. I rubbed my eyes until they burned. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I hyperventilated, short, sharp breaths. My hands started to shake. My heart hammered against my ribs. Perfect. I checked the rearview mirror. I looked wrecked. I walked to the front door. My boots felt heavy. I opened the door and the smell hit me. Vanilla bean. Jessica's favorite candle. It smelled like money. She was in the kitchen, leaning against the quartz island I'd installed last summer. She was scrolling on her phone, probably texting Gavin. I dropped my keys on the counter. She didn't look up. "You're late. I was about to order." I walked past her to the liquor cabinet. My hands were shaking so bad the bottle clinked against the glass. I poured 3 fingers of whiskey and downed it. It burned, but the cold knot in my chest was colder. "Jack?" Her tone wasn't worried. It was annoyed. "What is wrong with you?" I turned around. I let my shoulders slump. I looked at her, really looked at her. The highlights, the manicured nails, the expensive yoga pants. She looked pristine, unaffected. "It's over, Jess," I whispered. My voice cracked. I didn't have to fake that part. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the envelope. I slid the fake EPA notice and the Metro Waste memo across the island. They stopped right next to her wine glass. "What is this?" She picked up the papers. "Leachate leak," I said, staring at the floor. "Sector 4, the one I supervise. They're saying I authorized illegal dumping to cut costs. The EPA came down this afternoon." She was reading now. Her eyes scanned the page, skipping the technical jargon, hunting for the numbers. $4.5 million? Her voice went shrill. "They're filing a RICO indictment on Monday," I said. I rubbed my face, feeling the stubble. "The company is hanging me out to dry. They're going to seize everything for restitution. The savings, the pension." I paused. "The house." The kitchen went silent. The refrigerator hummed. Jessica didn't come over to me. She didn't touch my arm. She didn't ask if I was going to prison. She took a step back. "What do you mean, everything?" she asked. Her eyes were wide, but not with fear for me. "My name is on the deed, Jack. My name is on the joint accounts. It's marital property, I said. Community debt. They can take your car. They can garnish your future wages. They can destroy your credit score. That hit her. I saw the panic flare in her eyes. Not about losing me, about losing her credit rating. You did this? She stammered. You authorized this dumping? No, I was framed, Jess, but it doesn't matter. The paperwork is there. She started pacing. Her heels clicked on the hardwood. Click-clack, click-clack. I can't believe this. I cannot believe this. I have a life, Jack. I can't have a federal lien on my record. Do you know what that does? She was already gone. I could see the wheels turning. She was thinking about Gavin. How would the councilman react if his mistress came with $4.5 million in federal baggage? He'd drop her faster than a hot load of medical waste. There might be a way, I said softly. She stopped pacing. What? I called a guy. Saul Berkowitz, union lawyer. I pulled the second document from my bag, the liability shield. He said if we separate our assets before the indictment drops on Monday, they can't touch you. I put the agreement on the table. It's a post-nuptial asset separation, I explained, keeping my voice dull, defeated. You sign away your claim to the house and my retirement. In exchange, you get full immunity from the debt. The house becomes my sole liability. When the feds come, they take it from me, not you. I looked her in the eye. I'm trying to save you, Jess. I'll take the fall. You walk away clean. She looked at the document. She looked at me. For a second, I thought she might see through it. I thought she might ask why I was being so generous. But greed is a powerful blinder. Can I show this to a lawyer? She asked. You can, I said. But the indictment is Monday morning. If this isn't notarized and filed by Friday at 5, we're both on the hook for the full $4 million. I let out a shaky breath. I don't want to drag you down with me. She bit her lip. She looked at the house around her, the granite counters, the stainless steel appliances. She saw a sinking ship. Okay, she whispered. Okay. The next week was a masterclass in tension. I slept in the guest room. I kept the act up. I stopped shaving. I wore the same shirt 2 days in a row. I sat in the living room in the dark, staring at the wall. Jessica avoided me like I was contagious. I heard her on the phone in the bathroom. The shower was running, but I could hear her voice through the vent. It's a disaster, Gavin. A total disaster. No, he's taking the debt. Yes, I'm sure. I just need to get my name off everything before Monday. She was checking Zillow. I saw the browser history on the iPad. She was looking at luxury apartments in the city, 2-bedroom units near City Hall. She wasn't mourning the marriage. She was planning the exit strategy. Every time she looked at me, I saw contempt. She looked at me like I was a broken tool, something that had served its purpose and now needed to be discarded. It hurt, I won't lie. You spend 12 years with someone, you think you know them, but then you realize you were just a line item on a spreadsheet. By Wednesday, she was pushing me to get the papers signed. Did you call the notary? She asked over breakfast. She was eating yogurt, standing up. We can't wait until the last minute, Jack. I called, I said into my coffee. Friday morning, February 12th. The morning of the signing, the sky was gray. Heavy snow was forecast for the afternoon. Saul sent a mobile notary. A woman named Brenda. She sat up on the dining room table. She had a little stamp and a logbook. The house was silent. The only sound was the rustle of paper. I sat at the head of the table. Jessica sat on the side. She was dressed up, makeup done. She looked like she was going to a party, not signing away her marriage. Okay, Brenda said. This is the liability shield agreement. It states that Jessica Kovacs waives all current and future interest in the property located at 424 Elm Street, as well as all interest in the Metro Waste System's 401k and pension plan held by Jack Kovacs. Brenda looked over her reading glasses. In exchange, Jack Kovacs assumes sole responsibility for all liabilities, known and unknown, including pending litigation. Yes, Jessica said. That's right. You understand that by signing this, you are permanently forfeiting your equity in the home, even if the liability is later discharged. My heart stopped. Brenda was doing her job too well. Jessica didn't hesitate. I understand. I just want out of the liability. I want my name off the deed. She reached for the pen. It was a silver Parker I'd given her for our 5th anniversary. I remembered buying it. I remembered thinking we'd write our future with it. She signed. Scratch, scratch, scratch. She signed rapidly, flipping the pages without reading the fine print. She was focused entirely on the escape hatch. She thought she was dodging a bullet. She didn't know she was jumping in front of a train. And here, Brenda said, pointing to the bottom line. Jessica signed again. She exhaled a long, loud sigh of relief. Done, she said. She pushed the papers toward the notary. She actually smiled. A small, tight smile. I'm sorry it came to this, Jack, she said. She sounded like she was reading from a script. But you understand, right? I have to protect myself. I understand, I said. My voice was steady now. The shaking was gone. Brenda stamped the documents. Thump, thump. It was the sound of $425,000 in equity transferring back to me. It was the sound of my pension staying in my account. Use the proper disposal protocols. Isolate the contaminant. Remove it. Brenda packed up her bag. I'll file these with the county clerk within the hour. Thank you, Saul said. He had been standing in the corner, silent as a shadow. He took the originals. He didn't smile, but he gave me a nearly imperceptible nod. Jessica stood up. She grabbed her purse. I'm going to stay at my mother's for a few days, she said. Just to give you space to handle the legal stuff, you know? It was a lie. Her mother lived in Florida. She was going to Gavin's. Sure, I said. Space is good. She walked to the door. She didn't look back. She didn't say goodbye. She just walked out into the cold February air, thinking she was free. I heard her car start. I heard it back out of the driveway. Then the engine faded away. I sat there at the empty dining table. The house was quiet. The smell of her vanilla candle was still in the air, but it was fading. I looked at my hands. They were still calloused, still rough, but they were mine. I had the house. I had the money. I had the truth. Now I just had to wait for February 14th, Valentine's Day, the day the indictment was supposed to drop, the day she would find out there was no indictment. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. I picked up the bottle of whiskey, but I didn't pour a drink. I put the cap back on. I had work to do. February 14th, 2024, 6:30 a.m. The kitchen smelled of stale coffee and betrayal. I sat at the island, nursing a mug of black coffee, watching my wife over the rim. Jessica was moving too fast for a Wednesday morning. She was dressed in that sharp charcoal blazer she usually saved for client meetings, but her hands were shaking as she zipped up a gym bag on the counter. It wasn't her gym bag. The nylon strained at the seams. You're up early, I said. My voice sounded flat in the quiet house. Jessica jumped, nearly knocking over her travel mug. God, Jack, don't sneak up on me. She forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her eyes were darting around the room, cataloging, checking exits. I'm going to stay at my mother's for a few days. With this federal investigation, the stress is just making me nauseous. I can't sleep here knowing the EPA could kick down the door any second. She wasn't going to her mother's. Her mother lived in a one-bedroom condo in Florida. I looked at the bag, the shape of her jewelry box pressed against the fabric. She was packing the small, portable assets. She was looting the ship before jumping overboard. Right, I said, taking a slow sip. The investigation. It's heavy, Jess. I understand. It's just too much risk, Jack, she said, her voice pitching up into that whine she used when she wanted to play the victim. I need to protect my mental health. You understand, right? I understand completely, I said. You do what you have to do to protect yourself. She didn't catch the double meaning. She grabbed the bag, her knuckles white. She didn't kiss me goodbye. She didn't even look back. She just walked out the door, into the gray morning, thinking she was escaping a burning building. She didn't know she was walking out of the airlock. 9 a.m. The yard at Metro Waste Systems was screaming loud. Hydraulic compactors ground trash into cubes, and the backup alarms of the loaders cut through the diesel fumes. It was the smell of honest work. I stepped into my glass-walled office and shut the door, muffling the roar. I picked up the phone and dialed. Saul Berkowitz, the voice rasped on the other end. It's Jack, I said. Did the clerk record it? Morning, Jack. Happy Valentine's Day, Saul chuckled, a dry smoker's sound. Yeah, it's done. The liability shield agreement was formally recorded with the county clerk at 8:05 a.m. It's ironclad. She waived all interest in the marital residence, your pension, and your 401k in exchange for immunity from your, business liabilities. And since those liabilities don't exist, since the EPA fines are fiction, Saul finished, she effectively gifted you her half of the estate for $0. It's the cleanest asset strip I've ever seen. You're clear, Jack. The trap is welded shut. Thanks, Saul. I hung up. Outside my window, a truck tipped a load of construction debris onto the concrete floor. Dust rose up, settling into the cracks. It was messy, but it was contained. 11:45 a.m. I was reviewing the route efficiency logs for District 4 when my phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. I can't handle the risk of the RICO charges. I need space. Staying at my mother's for a while. Don't call. I need time to think. I stared at the screen. She wasn't asking for time. She was establishing a paper trail for abandonment, thinking she was the one leaving me. She was probably already halfway to Gavin Thorne's place, or sitting in a bistro celebrating her freedom. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I just felt the cold, hard adrenaline of the execution phase. I picked up the landline and dialed the number I'd had on a sticky note for 3 weeks. This is Kovacs, I said when the process server answered. She's at her office, go ahead. 1 p.m. I wasn't there, but the process server, a guy named Mike who used to drive a recycling truck, gave me the play-by-play later. Jessica's marketing firm was one of those trendy open-plan places. Polished concrete floors, exposed ductwork, everyone working in silence with expensive headphones. Mike didn't whisper. He walked right up to her desk in the center of the room. Jessica Kovacs? He boomed. She stood up, confused, probably thinking it was a courier with a Valentine's gift from Gavin. Mike thrust the thick manila envelope into her hands. You've been served, ma'am. Divorce petition and a motion for exclusive possession of the marital residence. Mike said she dropped her phone. It hit the concrete face down. The screen shattered. The whole office went dead silent. 20 people watching her hold the paperwork that ended her life as she knew it. 1:15 p.m. I was sitting in my truck, watching the rain streak the windshield, when my phone rang. Jack! She was screaming. Jack, what the hell is this? A divorce? Exclusive possession? Are you insane? I let her scream for a moment. It was just noise, unsorted data. Jack, answer me! How can you file for divorce when the EPA is about to seize everything? You're going to destroy us both. There is no EPA investigation, Jess, I said. Silence. Absolute terrified silence. What? Her voice was a whisper. There are no RICO charges, I said, keeping my voice steady, like I was explaining a missed pickup. There is no $4.5 million fine. Peter Chang and I staged the audit. The documents were fake. I don't understand. You signed the asset waiver to protect your money from a debt that doesn't exist, I told her. You gave me the house, the cars, and the pension to save yourself. You left with nothing because you wanted to leave me with nothing. Jack, you can't. That's fraud. It's a contract, I said. You had a lawyer review it. You signed it. It's done. I'm coming home, she stammered. We need to talk about this. No, I said. Read the motion, Jessica. Exclusive possession. I changed the locks an hour ago. If you step on the property, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. I hung up. 2:30 p.m. She panicked. I know she did because Saul's secretary told me later. Jessica sat in her car, hyperventilating, reading the liability shield over and over again. Waives all claim to the marital residence located at. Forfeits all interest in the Metro Waste System's 401k. She called Saul Berkowitz's office, screaming that she wanted to rescind her signature. The secretary, a sweet lady named Doris, told her calmly, I'm sorry, Mrs. Kovacs, but Mr. Berkowitz represents your husband. We cannot advise you. You should seek your own counsel. She hadn't jumped off a sinking ship. She jumped off a luxury liner into the middle of the Atlantic, and she hadn't even grabbed a life vest. 4 p.m. This is the part where the logistics broke down for her. She drove to Gavin Thorne's campaign headquarters. I knew she would. She needed a savior, and she thought she had a councilman in her pocket. I can picture it. Gavin, Mr. District 4, sitting in his office, looking at polling numbers. Jessica bursting in, mascara running, hair a mess, waving legal papers. She would have spilled everything. The fake investigation, the trick, the fact that she had signed away her share of an $850,000 house and was now homeless and broke. She probably thought he'd be outraged. She probably thought he'd use his pull to fix it. But Gavin Thorne didn't get to be a councilman by betting on losing horses. He would have looked at her, really looked at her, not as a fun afternoon distraction, but as a liability. So, Gavin would have said, smoothing his suit jacket, to be clear, you have no assets. You are in the middle of a contentious divorce. And your husband has proof of the affair. We can be together now, Gavin, she would have cried. I did this for us, so I wouldn't drag his debt to you. You did it to save your own skin, Gavin would have replied. And you got played. I have an election in November, Jessica. I can't have a scandal with a broke mistress dragging down my numbers. He checked his watch. The universal sign for your time is up. I think you should leave, Jessica. She would have argued. She would have pleaded. But security would have escorted her out past the campaign volunteers. Stripped of her husband, her house, her lover, and her dignity in the span of 4 hours. 6 p.m. I pulled into the driveway in Oak Creek. The rain had stopped. The garage door opened with a groan that sounded loud in the evening air. I stepped out of the truck. Martha Higgins was on her porch next door. She was wrapped in a shawl, watching me like a hawk. She gave me a small, knowing wave. She hadn't seen the black Lincoln Navigator in weeks, and she knew she wouldn't see it again. I nodded back. I unlocked the front door. The sound was wrong. It echoed. I walked into the living room. It was empty. She must have come back with movers before I changed the locks, or maybe she had friends help her earlier in the week while I was at work. The leather sectional was gone. The curated art prints were gone. The dining table, gone. I walked through the house. The floors were dusty where the rugs used to be. The walls showed pale squares where pictures had hung. I went into the kitchen. The refrigerator door was open, the light humming. She had even taken the food. The shelves were bare except for a jar of pickles and a half-empty bottle of mustard. Petty, but on the granite island, sitting in a pool of light from the overhead fixture, was the only thing that mattered. My copy of the deed. And next to it, the signed liability shield. She had taken the furniture. She had taken the decorations. She had taken the stuff. But the structural equity, the walls, the roof, the foundation, that was mine. I breathed in. The house smelled of lemon floor wax and silence. It didn't smell like her vanilla candles anymore. 7 p.m. Night had fallen. I stood in the center of the empty living room. Most men would feel loss, looking at the void where their life used to be. 20 years of marriage gone. The woman I thought I knew, gone. But I didn't feel loss. It felt like a job site after the waste has been hauled away. Clean, sterile, ready for new construction. I looked at my watch. The heavy steel chronograph ticked steadily. I was 42. I was alone. I was going to be sleeping on the floor tonight in a sleeping bag until I could buy a mattress. But I was free. I picked up my hard hat from the counter. I adjusted the strap. The night shift at Metro Waste started in an hour. Time to go, I whispered to the empty room. There is always more trash to take out.